Exemptions, there's a higher standard that you might need to meet in order to meet the standards of the external body, which in this case is the Institute of Actuaries. Okay, so the Institute of Actuaries have their own pathway to becoming an actuary. It has 3 levels, which I'll talk about in a moment. And because you're doing some of your studies here at university, you can be exempt from some of the requirements of the Actuaries Institute pathway to becoming an actuary. Does that make sense? So what you do here will help qualify you for what the Institute of Actuaries requires of you. Okay, so getting, in most cases, it's a credit or a 65 average in units here at Macquarie will exempt you from having to do the professional examination with the Institute of Actuaries. So just a little bit about what the Actuaries Institute program, and this is spelled out in that brochure there that Mike left. Mike's sort of in charge of the education program across the whole institute, so he's across all of these 3 streams. But there's 3 streams. They used to be called Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3, which was very easy to remember. Now I need to read what they are. They are the Foundation Program, the Actuary Program and the Fellowship Program. Okay, and it's in that order. Through your time at university, if you get all the exemptions available to you in a 4-year degree, then that can exempt you from all of the Foundation Program and half of the Actuary Program. Okay, so the Foundation Program is pretty much all the exemption units you do in your undergraduate single degree or double degree, and the Actuary Program component is control cycle and data analytics, actuarial data analytics. Okay, so there's still some other exams you have to do outside of the university for the Actuary Program. And then the Fellowship Program, which we used to call the Part 3s, is the really specialised actuarial subjects that, again, you have to do through the Institute of Actuaries. And that's what Mike was talking about at the end there. So there it all is. This is the diagram that's in the brochure, and that's how it's all spelled out. So some of these things will be familiar to you, even if you don't recognise the codes. So actuarial statistics, risk modelling and survival analysis, actuarial mathematics for modelling, economic modelling, business finance and business economics. They are spread across most of the ACST and some stat and econ units that you do as a part of your undergraduate studies. Okay, you'll recognise actuarial control cycle and data science principles, which we call actuarial data analytics, are the ones that we offer as part of your 4th year, or some students also do it via non-award through the university as well. Then these are the bits that you have to do outside the university: asset liability management and communication modelling and professionalism. I think that was the one that Mike said was a very easy one to pass. And then the fellowship program is there. So that's sort of the big picture of the education program. Do I have any questions on that before we move on? Because that might be new to some of you. You've heard it talked about, but to see it all on a page like that, you might not have noticed before. Just while we're here, a little bit about the fellowship program. So it used to be you had to do 4 subjects. Now you have to do 3, and two of them you choose as your principal subjects. So that could be banking, ERM, general insurance and health pricing and portfolio analytics, general insurance and health valuation, investment, life insurance and retirement product development, life insurance and retirement valuation. So you've got to choose 2 of those, and then you have to choose one of the following: data science applications, general insurance applications, life insurance applications, superannuation and retirement applications. You might look at that and go, I have absolutely no idea which ones of those I would like to do, and that's perfectly fine at this stage of your education journey. What tends to happen is people land themselves an actuarial job. Sometimes that's, I really want to get into general insurance. Sometimes it's whatever actuarial job will have me. And at that point, they'll make a decision about where they want to go with their studies. So if I'm working for a life insurer, it probably makes sense for me to do a few life insurance subjects, general insurance, whatever. Okay? So you don't need to worry about making those decisions now. We're happy to chat to you about that if you're sort of thinking about it this early on. But that's a sort of decision for another day. Foundation program, actuary program, there's no choice in that. You have to do all of those things in order to qualify. I might just talk, I'm going to get someone else to talk about this, but I might just jump to the other bit I was going to talk about, which was, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. You don't have to go all the way with the 3 levels of the education program. So once you finish the fellowship, which is the final stage, you become what's called a Fellow of the Institute of Actuaries of Australia, FIAA, and you get to put little letters after your name, which is pretty cool. And that's pretty much the highest level of actuary you can be, in that you can then sign off on actuarial reports. You can take statutory roles, so a job that the law says has to be held by an actuary, you can do that sort of job. I think there's about 2,000 fellows in Australia. Does anyone want to correct me on that? Let's go with it. 2,000 fellows in Australia. So it's a pretty sort of exclusive group when you think about it in that regard. And it's a very versatile qualification. So once you're there and you keep paying your membership fees and keep doing your continuing professional development, I think it's a very versatile qualification that can take you in many different places, and people see you're a fellow of the institute, you must know what you're talking about. It's sort of that good. If you were to choose to stop after the actuary program level, you can then become what's called associate, is that right? Associate of the Institute of Actuaries of Australia, AIAA, still 4 letters, still sounds pretty cool. And you can call yourself an actuary. There are a few other boxes you need to tick, so you need to have done a couple of years of work in a actuarial field, and basically you need another member of the profession to sign off and say, yes, this person has met the criteria of the professional requirement of being an actuary. But again, that's a very versatile qualification. So we often have people who choose to stop at that point because they don't see necessarily the value. They might not be working in one of the traditional fields that's covered by the fellowship program, and still they are very highly regarded and a really good qualification. Should you go on from the AIAA to the FIAA? It's too early for you guys to be thinking about that right now. I strongly encourage it if you're willing and able to do the fellowship program to go for it, but it's not going to be right for everyone, okay? And it's certainly not a limiting thing to say, I'm going to stop here and not progress. Some people, I've got a good friend who stopped at the actuary program for many, many years. This fellowship program has just been recently redesigned. I mentioned it's gone from 4 subjects down to 3. He's now picking it back up and going to pursue the fellowship at a much more advanced age. I won't tell you what that age is because he's my one of my colleagues, so you will figure out how old I am. But there's nothing stopping you from stopping at actuary and then picking it up later on. Okay. Any questions on that? I'll feel bad if you don't ask me any questions when you ask the president questions. No? Okay, excellent. I'm going to hand over to Colin, who's going to take it from here.
Hello everyone, my name is Colin Zhang. I'm the course director for the Bachelor of Actuarial Studies. So some of you already know me and some of you have seen me during the open day or the orientation session. So here are some details we need to know about the undergraduate mapping for the exemption units for the exam we have. And then you can see that we have 8 different exams for the foundation part, and with the code with CB1, CB2, CS1, CS2, CM1, CM2, and plus we have 2 subjects for the actuarial part, which is ACC, which is Actuarial Studies, and DSP, which is the Data Analytics unit we offered at Macquarie. And the common rule we have is we need to achieve the grade of 65 or above. And if we have more units, more than 1 unit, we take the average to make sure that it achieves more than 65 or above. With the requirement, each single unit need to have at least 60. That would be one exemption for the CB2 unit, which is related to 2 first-year econ units. Since those are the first-year econ units, the bar is slightly higher than the other units. We need to have 65 for all 2 units, or for both 2 units. And then we also have those 2 subjects for the actual component or for the actual program. Those 2 units can be covered, if you are doing a double degree, can be covered during your year 4 study, or if you are doing a single degree, you can achieve those two, complete those 2 units after graduation through the non with the study. So you probably will ask which way is best, okay? Which way is better? There's no like the unique answer or the closed form solution from my view. So closed form solution for your case. So you need to think about it case by case, okay? If you think about like having the single degree and you have a job offer which is in advance, like for your first year, and you probably can have a double degree and transfer back to the single degree, graduate and take the job offer and achieve your exam or complete your actuary part afterwards, after your graduation. So maybe you are doing a single degree and you think about, okay, I want to having those units within my undergraduate study, which is fine. You can transform to a double degree. So if you have anything you want to ask for your study plan, transfer from single degree to double degree back to single degree, feel free to send me the email. You can find my information through the Course Compass website, okay? My email address. Feel free to contact me. And here is Maggie's turn.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name's Maggie Lee and I'm the course director for Master of Actual Practice. So it's good to see quite a few of you who are postgraduate students, but also for those of you who are bachelor students, I'll probably see you later on in 4th year where I teach control cycle and actual data analytics. Okay, so in terms of the exemption mapping for postgraduate students, you guys will know that for a full postgraduate degree, it is 2 years. So all of the units that we have, including the foundation units, so CB1, CB2, CS1, CS2, CM1, CM2, as well as control cycle and the data science principles, which is called actual data analytics here at Macquarie, you can actually potentially fit it in that full 2 years. So it's very condensed, but because it is also so condensed, it's also why we have come up with 3 recommended programs in those 2 years where at various stages, depending on what you feel like you want to achieve or can achieve, you can decide to maybe just focus on completing only the foundation units, which is what we call recommended program 2, or take some of the foundation units out and have a lower load, which is what we call the recommended program 1, or have the full load, which is the recommended program 3. So with all of these, I guess you can see on the slide there is a mapping of what these institute exams are to the postgraduate units. And like the bachelors, each of these have certain criteria to achieve the exemptions. So for some of them, you have to get single greater than or equal to credit, and some of them are a credit average with a minimum of 60 in either of those units. So you can just take a photo of that really. Now I think one of the key things for the recommended programs is if you are in recommended program 2, for example, it's not too late when you're in your first year to move to recommended program 3. So if you have any questions about that, again, I'm here to talk about the study plan. So get in touch with me if you have any questions about it. But we do recommend for recommended program 3 that you have to have really strong results and quantitative skills that you can exhibit in your first year at least. All right, so next part, the exemption procedure. I think Chongit is up for this, so I'll pass that to him now.
Okay, so my name is Chongit. I'm the nominated accreditation actuary. So what that means is I look after all things related to accreditation, related to exemption, related to curriculum and so on. And a piece of good news I think I can share now is that we are in the process of setting up an exchange program with a university in Singapore, and the earliest time you can go to exchange in Singapore is session 2 2025 in your second year. So if you are now a first year student, you might want to think about that. Okay, so a bit about exemption procedure. I bet many of you here know what is called campus, where Maggie and Colin would have introduced that during the orientation week. So in terms of lodging for the exemption formally, what would happen is the best time to lodge it is around the time you finish your degree at Macquarie. It might be, at the end of your single degree, might be at the end of your double degree, and so on, okay? So watch out for the island announcement, either on course campus, or if you're doing fourth year subject, control cycle and data analytics, we will make announcement over there. So in terms of the process, maybe some of you here haven't used AskMQ, but sooner or later, you might find yourself needing to use that for special consideration and so on. You lodge your request over there, and then the NAA, in this case myself, would approve your case, and then we will submit the recommendation to the Actuaries Institute. And what happens next is that they will contact you personally to your personal email to talk about paying for the student membership as well as the exemption fee. Okay? Now, remember I say, the best time to apply for all this from the Macquarie standpoint is around your final semester, after the exam release date. I really don't see any reason you should do it early, but once they contact you, the best time to pay for the fees are after you start your full-time job, okay? So if you haven't secured one full-time job, you can still apply at the end of your degree with us here in Macquarie. Wait until you start a full-time job. They will pay everything for you, okay? So for context, the exemption fee for one subject is $300. And if you pass overall, the maximum you can pass is 8 subjects, that is $2,400. And then on top of that, you have to pay for membership fee. So that's quite a lot of money, and that's why we advise about the ideal time. Now, let's talk about what if, and I love questions. I think the purpose of you showing up here just is to pay attention and ask questions if possible. Otherwise, these are recorded, it will be posted later. Okay, so what if you don't meet the criteria? I think just now we showed you the table. You don't have to worry too much, but 65 is the goal, right? So what if you don't get 65? The first response is don't panic, okay? And the first question to consider is really ask yourself, do you want to continue? Because there's no point spending day and nights worry about, do I get exemption? What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. If you don't want to pursue a career in the actuarial industry, okay? So we are not here to sell you things, but we want you to make the decision for your own career, for your own development. So do you want to consider, do you want to continue the pathway? If the answer is yes, then there are a couple of options. First of all, if you fail the unit, then you have no choice but to redo the unit. Most of them are compulsory. If they are not compulsory, you can check with Colin and Maggie. Then you might have a choice not to redo it, okay? And then another alternative scenario, Simon talked about passing P's get degrees, but in order to get exemption, you need 65. So let's say you get a 54. So you don't get exemption, but you pass, right? So you are not allowed to repeat the subject because you pass it, right? So in that case, you should redo the unit on what we call a non-award basis, okay? So you redo the unit for the purpose of exemption. That's what we call non-award, because technically you have gained the credit points. Technically, you don't need the credit points for your degree, okay? Or you might do it under Master of Actuarial Practice, okay? And see the word unit, after unit there's no S. I think that's on purpose. I will tell you more later. But see, unit is singular. If it's plural, then it might not be a good idea, okay? Now, the third option is to sit and pass the exam directly with the institute, okay? So you can go to the institute, register to be a member, and just to clarify, just now I encourage you to become a subscriber. In order to sit for the exam, you need to be a student member. And just to say this before I forget, remember just now I say the best time to apply for exemption is at the end of year 3 or year 4. If somehow you decide to sit for the exam at the end of your year 2, you still don't do the exemption thing. You just do the register for the exam and sit for the exam thing. We worry about the exemption later, after you get a job, okay? So you are not slowed down because of not asking for exemption at that time, okay? So now, then among these 3 options, I think the first option is obvious, right? And then among the last 2 options, how do you decide? Okay, now just now Colin Maggie show you for some subject there are 3 subjects that you need to do well. Okay, so if you get, let's say 50 something for all 3 subjects, what that means is in order to get the exemption you need to redo all 3. It costs a lot of time, it costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of resources. You probably don't want to do that. Okay, so in that case, if you need to redo 2 or 3, I would strongly say, as much as we are representing Macquarie, we say go to institute because that's for responsible for your own decision making. So you sit and pass the exam directly, not with us. And then that leaves the only scenario where if you only have to do 1 unit at Macquarie or you redo the whole exam, then as you can imagine, there's a reason why certain subjects need 2 or 3 subjects. It means the amount of learning materials are quite a lot. So if you redo 1 subject with Macquarie, you're learning less. And you're learning for the second time at least. Okay? So in that case, you might want to do it with us and not taking the whole thing with the institute. Okay? I can tell you financially, if you were to pay for it out of pocket of your own money, so you might think by now that means when you're still studying, right? Because after you get a job, hopefully your employer will pay everything for you. So financially, it makes no difference, okay? But if you do it while you're still studying, the cost of taking the exam with the institute is cheaper. Again, as an actuary, I need to tell you the fact, right? I wouldn't say, do it with Macquarie, blah, blah, blah. So in that sense, that could be a factor. But if employer support is there, then it's not a factor. Then it's about you deciding whether you want to sit for the exam or you want to redo with Macquarie. Bearing in mind, if you redo with Macquarie, that means you do class tests, you do final exam, you do assignment. Whereas if you do with the institute, it's just exams. I will show you more, okay? Now, the last piece here is if you have to do it during your degree, I would strongly encourage you not to do it in your 3rd year because it's going to be quite heavy. The 4th year session 1 is the best time because you will have some space to do that, okay? So this is what institute exams look like, and I have to say in recent years there seems to be a preferred way of redoing the unit with Macquarie. I don't know why. Maybe familiarity issue, maybe other issue, but I'm observing that trend. So students are more reluctant to go to sit with the institute. But nonetheless, this is what it looks like. For example, if you don't get CM1, you would need to sit for 2 papers. And both of them are computer-based. Since COVID, they have moved away from pen and pencil, pen and paper. So you need to type, for example, the ADU 20 or things like that. It can be quite difficult to learn at first, but don't worry, you'll get a bunch of guidance. Everything will be computer-based. And then you look at the A. The A basically means, type in word file and, equation, calculation, and so on. There's a paper B as well. Paper B, depending on whether it's CM or CS, CM will get an Excel project, okay? So you get a bunch of data, you're asked to do some things, you do it on Excel, and then you produce a report in Word and Excel. I think you submit both Excel and Word, okay? For CS, then instead of using Excel, you use R. Okay, so you are given a bunch of data, you do some analysis, and then because I haven't taken the exam myself, I'm not sure if they check your R code or not. You can ask senior who has taken the exams. But at the end of the day, you submit a report in Word file and maybe R code. Okay, and then you need to do well in both in order to pass it. Okay, what are some of the advice? Do past year papers. You can download the past year papers from the IFOA website, and then your learning materials at Macquarie would prepare you sufficiently well, but you absolutely need to do the past year. And because usually they not repeat, but the pattern is predictable from the past year. And I mean, not try to discourage you. Usually, what happens is when students do the IFO exam externally, they start questioning why they come to university, not just Macquarie, but all the university to do the degree, because the institute exams are much easier. That's a fact. That's a fact. Okay, so practice, and build your confidence, because that's the only way to do well in exams. And I can share more about maybe foundation and actuary program and fellowship program. Remember, Mike was talking about in part one, you have a very defined problem, you have a single answer, but when you go to control cycle and fellowship subjects, there's no single answer. It's all about how you see the problem, what's your insight, what did you do. There's no right or wrong, there's no black and white. Okay? So maybe I'll invite Maggie and Colin to talk briefly about their experience. They are both Macquarie alumni, and maybe I will invite them to talk about why they did a double degree and single degree and what were the considerations. Yep.
Yeah, maybe I'll just go first. Over the last few years, as I was doing the service role as the course director, I received email from students talking about whether they want to do, what's the benefit of doing the double degree, what's the benefit of doing the single degree. So personally, I was just saying that for the double degree, you actually have more things to choose from. So currently what we have in our recommended program would be the double degree with applied finance, double degree with the maths or stats, and double degree with the data science. Next year, we will build a more recommended program for the AI, the artificial intelligence, or the cybersecurity one. For those double degrees, one benefit of that one is you would be able to complete those two subjects for your actuary program. So some of you will ask is that, what's the benefit of complete those two? Maybe it looks better in your CV when you're applying for a job. So for some traditional, like the companies in the traditional like insurance area, when they have like a very long history for hiring actuaries or actuarial graduates, they will know very details about your degree, what's your level for the completion for the foundation part for the actual programs. They know very well for that one. So completing those two subjects for the actual program definitely will be like a plus points for your CV. And then you probably ask, in that case, should you do a double degree instead of a single degree? It depends. As I said previously, for the single degree, you probably will consider is you can graduate within the 3 years' time, and then you can start to do the full-time job earlier than the double degree. And you can have the flexibility to pursue the actual program when you are doing your full-time job. That's the one I will say that it could be the flexibility for you. You do not need to decide at this stage, but you probably need to consider it carefully. And one thing you probably will ask is, as I mentioned previously, is if I'm doing a single degree, can I transfer to a double degree? If you have this plan, please contact me as soon as possible. It is possible to do it, but it is more flexible for you to do certain transform if you do it like after your year 1. It is much better if you suddenly make the decision after your year 2. And then the other way around would be much easier. So usually for the 4th year, for the double degree, quite a lot of students will say, I will drop to the single degree and graduate. Most of the time is they find a good job offer, they receive a good job offer, and they want to start it next year, and they want to complete that degree as soon as possible. That's good for them, and I would suggest if you have a very good job offer, go for it. You do not need to stick up with the double degree. You can graduate after 3 years' time. And also, single degree can have a certain benefit is you do not need to pursue the actual program right after your graduation. Right after your graduation, you might have a good job offer. You start your full-time job. Maybe you settle in with too many things. You don't need to right after your graduation start your study for the actual program. You can have a gap year and do it next year. Maybe it is better for you. And then another potential benefit for you would be if you get a job into a certain like insurance company. Usually they have certain study supported programs. They have days leaves like the 2 days per subject, for example, or 3 days per subjects for you guys to take to prepare for exam, etc. And they also have certain further support, like they have a mentorship program for their senior actuaries can mentoring to guide you how to prepare for certain exams. So that would be a potential benefit for you instead of taking it directly. So it's up to you. Okay, that's for my part. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Could you do the double degree with science in another field?
Good question. Theoretically possible, but the reason we only recommended the math and the stats for that one is, for 1 degree, usually it requires 16 subjects to complete 1 degree, right? For double degree, you need to complete 32 units. So theoretically, you can do the double for every single thing combined together, right? Theoretically. But the problem is, for the actual study for the bachelor degree, if you want to complete the exemption for all the foundation exams, you need to take 17 subjects instead of 16. So unless there's an overlap for the unit for certain major, then it will be a perfect fit. But another problem we could have is one potential motivation, one particular reason you want to do the double degree is you want to do the associateship units or actual units, 3 units. So not only we need to have 1 unit overlapping, we also need to have 3 elective units credit point space. So totally we need 4 overlapping units at least. So that would be the problem. Take an example for the information technology majoring in data science. We try to find is that only have 2 overlapping units between 2 majors or 2 degrees. So in that case, for the students doing the double degree with data science, if they want to complete all the associateship or all the actual program units, they need to do the credit overloading for 2 more units. So once again, doing the double degree does not require you to do the actual program units. Without actual program units, you can still graduate with a double degree. As you said, I want to do a double degree in science with different major. Yes, you can, and you can graduate. But there is a certain cost. So if you have certain interest, you can send me an email. I can look into detail for the particular major you want to do. One certain cost is you might not be able to do the actual program units. The second cost is you might not be able to achieve the exemption for all 8 foundation exams.
Okay, but just so I understand it, if I did a single degree, I also wouldn't complete all 8, would I?
You will, because for the single degree, the requirement is 24 units, right? You have 16 core units plus 8 elective units. But when they think about them marrying 2 degrees together to create a double degree, they always think about, okay, 16 core units, 16 core units added up 32 units. Okay?
Okay, so hi everyone. So Colin's covered quite a bit, so I might just share some of the experiences that I went through. So for context, I also studied at Macquarie University as a bachelor student, and so I took a double degree, but what I might do is go through in sequential order the things that you might want to think about if you want to take a single degree as a bachelor student, the things that you might want to think about for a double degree as a bachelor student, and then also for the postgraduate students. All right, so for single, Colin's already made a really good point about, if you do a single degree, you can go straight to work in that fourth year that would have been your double degree and just start working there. Students have done that. When I went to industry, there are a lot of my colleagues who are still studying the initial part 2s while they were working, so that's not uncommon, but there were definitely more people who were studying more advanced, so they had already done their part 2s at university. So that's something to think about. The other pro of maybe doing a single is you can keep the flexibility of potentially moving to Master of Actuarial Practice in your fourth year, and that Master of Actuarial Practice degree shortens from 2 years to 1 year because you have already done a lot of the foundation units in your bachelor degree. So it'll be recognised as kind of recognised prior learning to the Master of Actuarial Practice. And for those of you who are interested in a research career, so maybe one day working in academia, the path of Master of Research is also open. So maybe you want to do a single degree and actually do Master of Research instead of a double degree, right? So hopefully you can see kind of the trend here. It really depends on your interest area. Now for a double degree, I would say my recommendation is really think about whether that double is your interest, because you are adding an extra year, but the pro of that is you get to get your half of that actuary program units done. So I chose a double in mathematics because I loved the mathematic units when I was doing at university. But if we think about it from the actuarial employer point of view, whilst there is that additional skill that you're doing more in stats or maths or applied finance, it's not really too much of a focus. So even in terms of employment, whether you get a single or a double, there isn't that much difference in my opinion. So I would say focus on choosing this because it is your interest. I mean, ideally, if you have an interest in that artificial intelligence stuff, that's more of what is in trend now. That could be your interest. I would say if it's your interest, do it. And that could be seen as beneficial, but again, even a single degree, there really isn't too much difference there. Yep.
Just building on what I was asking before, if I did a degree, let's say I did it with astronomy in science, and then I did a master's, how would that work? I did a master's in actuarial, so what would I actually do if I've already done the actuarial degree as a double degree without one of those things?
Yep.
I would have done some subjects, but obviously not all of them.
Yep.
Do you know how that would work?
Yeah. So that's a really, really good question. So if you do a double, so the way you've done it, chances are, so you haven't done certain subjects that you needed to, right? I think what you might need to be aware of first of all, your double degree, you have course requirements that you need to ensure. So those 2 course requirements, whatever they are, what Colin was saying is that might not be in the 4 years, it might be 4.5. So if you do it in 4 years or 4.5, that's meeting the course requirements. Let's say from there you don't get certain foundation or part 2 units that you need to do. In that case, the recommendation may not be doing a Master of Actuarial Practice, because for context, Master of Actuarial Practice, you get a minimum of 1 year, which means we can only recognise 8 units of recognised prior learning, and you may have done way more in terms of recognised prior learning than the 1 year master, right? If that's the case, then non-award is open to you. So you could consider non-award, like Chongit has said. So you could do that, or there's the Actuaries Institute path. At the end of the day, that's focusing more on getting your exemptions, not so much on an additional degree. Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah. Normally for the master degree, if people want to do it, it's like the 3-year degree, and then they say, well, I needed to do an extra year anyway, rather than doing a double degree, getting recognition of getting a master degree, and doing the 3 part 2s plus other units at a flexible zone, is what is enticing to do that master 1-year degree. Yeah. Okay, so that was for undergrads and what to think about. For both postgrads, you are coming from a completely different kind of experience. You've already done an undergraduate degree. So with that respect, I think you guys, most of you will be pretty focused on just getting actuarial done, right? But that being said, we do offer doubles. Like, doubles are possible, but then with doubles, you will potentially be needing to study more than the 2 years, unless you've already done prior exemption units in your undergrad, and you're moving to postgrad. So we do offer doubles. That's something that I think postgrads probably don't know. So if you are interested in doubles, they're open to you, but I think most of you are probably focused on getting your actuarial stuff done in the 2 years. All right, so any other questions? Yep.
Just with the single degree, with the flexible units,
Mhm.
I think it's 8 flexible units that we have.
Yep.
If you're doing like units that make part of a minor, so why do you get accredited for that, even if it's not like a faculty?
So you're saying if you do a unit that's from a minor,
Yeah, so I don't know, take for example, I'm doing 6 units that make up a minor in French.
yeah.
Is that something that can be accredited, like on my degree at the end? Or is there no relation?
It would be counted for your degree. You
Yeah.
get a French minor,
Okay, so
but it wouldn't count towards the actual
Accreditation. Yeah. So that's part of like course requirements again. So my understanding for bachelor is whatever the flexible zone, you can choose based on if it's a double or whatever, or you can choose whatever units they are, because by definition flexible zone is you're flexible to choose something that's not part of that's not part of the, I guess, the actuarial program.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so is this us two? Oh, next one? Okay. Okay. So this is for postgraduate students, but for undergraduate students, you can listen in as well. So this is the other pathway that we offer at Macquarie University for postgraduate students, which is the Society of Actuaries Accreditation. Now, this one here is pretty new for us. We are one of 3 universities in Australia that are able to offer this accreditation, and we started this last year. So it's pretty exciting for us. And essentially, going through this pathway allows you to become a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. So this is from the US professional body. So with this program, we offer also exemption subjects, and the exemption subjects are part of the associate program, and it's not all of them, but they will include financial mathematics, fundamentals of actuarial mathematics, statistics for risk modelling, and the 2 advanced long-term and advanced short-term actuarial mathematics, and then the 3 in green, so what we call the VEE, economics, accounting, and mathematics and statistics. So again, there are requirements in terms of what you need to get for that. But once you do that, then the intention is you move on to studying with the US Society of Actuaries to do the rest of the units with them, to eventually get to either completing your associate or moving on to the fellow. Okay, so what are these units? So I've already told you which SOA exams that we get. So that's FM, FAM, SRM, and then the long term and then the short term, which are counted one or the other that you do. This, in terms of the criteria for exemption, is credit all above. So it's different to Actuaries Institute, where there's actually more leeway with the Actuaries Institute. You have, with the Actuaries Institute, credit average for some of them, the combinations, with getting a minimum of 60 or above. But for this, SOA is a little bit more strict. You need to get credit or above for these. And this applies for all the units. So the ones that do overlap between Actuaries Institute and the SOA include Econ 8091, ACST 8052, STAT 8310 and ACST 8041, which is an overlap of ACST 8081. So even for those of you who are in your bachelor's, I guess something to think about is maybe for whatever reason you only have those 4 units, right, that are equivalent in your undergrad that you've done, that you've gotten exemptions for, and you suddenly go, okay, I'll still complete my undergraduate, but I can't get my other exemptions for whatever reason. You may think, I want to do, then I'll consider doing the Master of Actual Practice, and the SOA option is also open to you in that way. Okay, so you could do it that way. That's another thing. In terms of what I saw, like a lot of students at Macquarie, even in my cohort when I was studying, we mainly do stick with the Actuaries Institute specialisation just because a lot of us end up living in Australia and staying and working in Australia. And so you can imagine if all your peers are also studying the same things and employers are giving that support, there tends to be more of, sticking with the Actuaries Institute. But for some of you who may be thinking of working overseas for your career, the US Society of Actuaries specialisation may be something that you want to think about. Now, you're not even locked in, even if you don't study the specialisation with us now, you could actually switch at some point, but we'll cover that in a little bit more detail. So in general, you're not completely locked in terms of, yes, you've gone through the Actuaries Institute and therefore you're only going to be a fellow of the Actuaries Institute Australia. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go through some Q&As of the submitted questions that you guys put through in the surveys. So we'll cover that now, and then we'll go through some ad hoc Q&As that you might have as well. Okay, so I'll pass it to Yanling now.
Okay. Hi everyone. I think some of you are my students for the survival models, and I'm a fellow of the Actuarial Institute. I'm also a fellow of the SOA. I actually did my fellowship in SOA. Then I got my FIA after mutual recognition. One thing to be noted is that I actually didn't do an actual degree. I did stats degree. So I actually studied at university, and I also did external examination. Okay, so I'm pretty familiar with the system. So the first question is that if you have cleared all the foundation program, will be able to register yourself. The answer is yes. Basically, you can register yourself as a student member. Okay. And that's the only eligibility you can do if you want to sit in FOA or Actuarial of the Institute exam. Okay? If you are not a student member, you cannot do it. Okay? Which means you have to pay student membership fee. It's not cheap. I did that 10 years ago. It was like 400 something. I think it's more expensive now, maybe 500 or 600. They call it an enrollment of semester. It's pretty similar to part 3. You have to enroll a course, then you sit in the examination. The only difference is the part 3 does have assignment, but part 1 examination doesn't have assignment. You just sit in the examination at the end of the semester. And exemption fee, Chong-Yi has mentioned that, $300. So basically, you have to go for the whole process to do that. So if you didn't pass the exam, you have to sit in an exam externally. That's the best option you could consider if you, like Chong-Yi said, you didn't satisfy or meet 2 or 3 of the, units, which can exempt 1 examination. Why did one of the course? It was survival models. It was the old CT4. I only did the stochastic process. I didn't study life table thing. So the thing is, if I need to pass the exam, they are a university, that means I have to study some course which my colleague teach me, okay, because I was working at the university. That was quite embarrassing, so I decided to take examination myself, okay. So it turned out to be a good experience. You will have a very comprehensive study menu, quite thick, like 1,000 pages, include everything. lecture notes, assignment, they call assignments, that's actually just a more practice question. And there are heaps of past year exam just on the FOA website, okay? Yeah, that's the thing. You can see it externally. You just need to pay more fees. But one thing you should be consider is, lecturing inside. If you want to study again at your university, you have to take non-award. Non-award, most likely you have to pay yourself, right? It's, I don't know, $4,000 per subject. It's quite expensive. But if you sit in the exam externally, it's just a couple of $100. Yeah, it's not, compared to that, it's much cheaper. That's something you may want to consider. The process of exemption is just like Chong-Yin mentioned. You should do it at your final year. Then, as an ANA, he will contact you, give you a letter, and that letter will be used eventually as part of the application process. Okay, and it's said FOA a lot. It actually should be the Institute of Actuarial in Australia. Okay. So next question is, how do you decide the area of specialization after finishing the part 2? Basically, that means you have become an AIAA. More realistically, in this case, you have worked in the industry for a few years, possibly, because AIA required you to spend at least 3 years as an employee, so you are a professional with 3 years working experience. So in that case, you might have touched a lot of areas, in actuarial profession, and you may have a more determined, area to go. But nowadays, we can share you with some data. Among all the track, data science is something, trending for now. And it's unlike 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I think it's more general insurance and life insurance. But now it's all about AI. Okay, so doing it, it's just like when people talk about what degree you should study at the university. Someone said, if you don't know what to study, just study business, commerce, because that will give you something, something good enough to find a job after the uni. It's something just like this. If you don't know what to start, possibly you pursue the data science, because data science is so much, there are so many people doing that. You definitely can find a job, and it's still trending. But if you really like maths, you can consider the investment, because investment, I believe that's something most of us passed. Although I didn't do that, I did general insurance because my friends told me general insurance should be the future. I regret it a lot because general insurance, it's not only difficult, it's so many laws and regulations to memorize. Okay, it's like I'm doing a law degree, not really like actuarial. So it's your choice, but after you are thinking about this, at that stage, I believe you already have something in mind, okay? After a few years as a working professional. What is the future growth of the actuarial profession? That's a very good question. For now, people are talking about the decrease of the actuarial number, but because of the trending of the data scientists. Actually, if you take a read of the paper, I think that's Financial Times or somewhere, major media, they publish 10 most promising major, and actuary is one of them. Okay, so 10 most promising major or profession in next 20 years. Actuary is among them. Balancing both the payment, the barrier, which means it's difficulty to be accredited. So I believe that is still a very promising area to go, especially if you are good at maths, but less comfortable at communication. I believe actuary is also a very good profession to go because the payment is very good compared to other majors, but it still depends on my hardcore techniques, which is mathematics. Okay, so if you're good at numbers, that's always something to think about. Are there exemptions I can transfer to other countries? Definitely, that's what I did. Okay, the SOA, for example, and the Australian Institute, they have mutual recognition, we call waiver rule. So that's very specific from subject to subject. And yeah, if you are interested, you can check both SOA and Australian Institute website. They have a comprehensive list on that. Can accreditation from institute carry out over to another country? Definitely possible. But I did the other way around. I did SOA fellowship, then I transferred back to FIA, but you can do it the other way around. The only thing you have to do is if you have, for example, an FIAA, you want it to become FSA, you have to take the 3-day fellowship professional unit in US. Okay, the very last one, professionalism unit. You have to study